Simpleton. Welcome back to Wake Up with Watches on Watchbox Reviews. Did you miss me? I missed you. And I've got a new way for you to reach out to me. To square the circle, so to speak, or circle the square, I've created a new email that allows you to reach out directly to me and my team, tmosso at thewatchbox.com, for sales or purchase inquiries regarding anything you see here. And remember, even if it's gone, I can usually still get it. So again, trying to make this more of an interactive shopping experience, you can now reach me right here regarding all that you see here. Jumping straight in, let's talk about a watch that caught my eye a few years back, principally because it is just so feature-dense and rich. The Laurent Ferrier Traveler Cloisonne. Now this is a timepiece with a Cloisonne enamel dial, whereby you have a vitreous fired enamel dial with golden wires to create the cloisonne effect, that is enamel bounded by the golden wires to create the image of the landmass. Now there are two different things going on here, the enamel and the golden wires. The wires are the cordons or the cloisonne. The other important thing to remember is the enamel is not simply the application of different colors, but the application of different weights. As you can see, there are darker and lighter parts of the oceans as well as the land masses, even within the same color. That's done by applying lighter or heavier weights of the vitreous enamel that becomes the hardened fired enamel cloisonne dial. White gold indices, white gold hands. The watch features a Patek Philippe travel time like toggle system whereby dedicated pushers adjust the local time forward or backwards. You'll also note that you can use the travel time system to jump the date forward or backwards depending on which way you are flying across the international date line. 41 millimeters in white gold. It features the Galet or smoothed pebble shape, and you can see that there is a second time zone in 24-hour format visible over at 9 o'clock. The watch is graceful, practical, beautiful, and technical. As you can see on the reverse side, this is the Laurent Ferrier caliber 230. Let's get a little bit closer, and you can see the movement is exquisite. The finest finishing you'll find in Geneva. There is a plastic cover over this case back. It is a sticker. That's what you're seeing, that little bit of sediment and bubbling. But the movement featuring a double direct impulse escapement in the form of Breguet's natural escapement, impulsing the balance with two wheels. There is no Swiss lever. The wheels impulsing the balance directly and only in its direction of travel. Free sprung with an overcoil adjusted in 6 positions, one more than a standard chronometer. There is a 22-karat guilloche cut micro rotor with a jeweled staff and a pawl system that turns silently. 72-hour power reserve, 21.6 beat rate, and you can see black polish on the half bridge for the balance, as well as 4 interior angles inside the half bridge and 1 more at center. Remove my Zinn Easy M11, which you know well. Throw this one on the wrist, and you can see this technically accomplished and unarguably beautiful watch is an easy fit on a smaller wrist. At 41 millimeters, it's a nice full-sized men's watch, neither oversized nor undersized. Has a nice full figure on the wrist with a grace that comes with the case. And as you can see on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it is a perfect size. Not too big, not too small. The porridge is just right. Now let's talk about another watch with an absolutely sensational dial, albeit from a completely different spectrum of the market. Launched back in the early 2000s, the iridescent 225580 Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter remains a dream watch to me. Now this was the basic Bond Seamaster with a few upgrades. First, you have the broadsword style hands and maxi indices, first introduced on the 1998 Seamaster 300 meter GMT, so more lume, easy to see. They also have a lovely key lime color, as this is the brightest grade of superluminova. This one is a torch at night and in the day. You have red, white, blue, and that key lime color on a dial that's bounded by a polished bezel insert featuring blue lacquer, and the blue lacquer has been painted inside the indices and the numerals to create a lovely subtle contrast on the dial. I should say the bezel. The dial itself is explosive with the now legendary and much loved Omega Seamaster wave pattern, but this is not the matte blue Bond blue. This is a lacquer blue on top of a metallic base that has the qualities of being both glistening and gleaming like metal and glossy like lacquer. Throw it on the wrist. 41.5 millimeters. The watch has a Omega caliber 1120 chronometer certified 23 jewel modification of the 21 jewel ETA 2892A2. So a chronometer for your wrist, helium escape valve for saturation divers, and 300 meters for the rest of us. A nice sharp looking watch with a more masculine and sporting bracelet. than the Bond series, which featured that intermediate link design that was somewhere between a sports bracelet and a dress bracelet. This one is solid sports. As you can see, a square-shouldered 3-link design here with polished intermediates. Handsome and wearable, this is a modern classic, but in its less common form, and therefore endearing to me as I like to be offbeat. I also like blue dial watches, and we're running the table with them today. Jumping back up the price spectrum, one of the most respected and coveted discontinued modern Patek Philippe sports watches, the Patek Philippe Nautilus Chronograph 5980. 40.5 millimeters in stainless steel. This watch came out in 2006 as the first ever Nautilus chronograph. You have a metallic blue dial with a gradient effect, a sort of silver blue at its center, navy blue at its edge, white gold baton hands and indices. Now the watch has no constant seconds, but you could start up the chronograph and it features a vertical clutch, so you can simply leave it running if you prefer to have seconds on your dial. And though it does not feature hacking, it does feature a zero reset system by means of the chronograph flyback. So set the time and then zero reset to anchor the seconds hand at 12 o'clock, and you have synchronized to a reference time. Mono counter down at 6 o'clock, hours and minutes on one scale, and of course you've got the date, which does feature a quick set system. 55-hour power reserve, automatic winding, vertical clutch, and a column wheel. Despite the through case fittings for the chronograph pushers, the watch retains the basic 120-meter water resistance of the 5711, making this a very versatile timepiece, and at only 12.5 millimeters thick, it's smaller, more compact, and more cuffable than you would think. Also note how well Patek integrated the chronograph pushers into the wing fashion case of the Nautilus. A gorgeous watch that retains everything a Nautilus is, with the addition of a manufacturer vertical clutch column wheel flyback chronograph. You can see through the case back, handsomely finished in the grand Patek Philippe tradition, with a Gyromax free-sprung balance, handsome with a micro perlage on the center of the rotor and a macro perlage on the base plate. Now, let's stick with our beautiful blue dials and talk about one that pegs the meter, possibly the most interesting dial on the second most interesting dial on the table, to be continued. This is the Oris Aquis Date Clean Ocean, a 2019 limited edition of 2,000 pieces, 39.5 millimeters in stainless steel. It features a gradient dial that is best described as a gradient turquoise metallic. It's a light turquoise, almost aquamarine at its center, and a darker turquoise, symbolizing darker and deeper waters at its periphery. The bezel itself is turquoise ceramic. How often do you see that? With a red lacquered insert. So the bezel has an excellent action. I'm going to hold it up against the mic so you can hear. It's chunky and substantial with a nice pronounced detent, and at 39.5 millimeters, this is a universal size. 300 meters water resistant, full stainless steel. You can see with the bracelet system that pulls straight down and is secured by screws rather than springs. This watch is both easy to fit on any wrist and very robust thanks to the security of those screws. Now throw it on the wrist and you can see it is a perfectly sized watch. This limited edition of 2000 does battle with the standard size 40 millimeter dive watches across the price spectrum. From the very top to the bottom, this is a watch that I think has the style, the panache, and the raffish flair to wear competitively against any opposition. Few details. First, you get a twin trigger release clasp, and Oris is not pinching pennies, as you also get a full fold-out dive extension and 3 different divots for micro sizing by changing the anchoring point of the bracelet inside the clasp. Close it up, and you can see on the case back there is a plastic insert that is created from reclaimed ocean plastic, so every one of the 2000s features that little piece of feel-good. After all, it is a good cause, and that can be your justification for laying out to buy the Clean Ocean Edition. It's not for you, it's for the sake of the ocean. For the greater good, you owe it to the marine mammals to buy that watch. That said, here's a brand that is all about id and ego, with no redeeming qualities expressed or implied. Officine Panerai, and this is an uncommon example. A 2018 limited edition of 100 pieces for the Ginza Boutique. This one can be your woman from Tokyo. 44 millimeters in the Luminor 1950 case. You can see this is a combination of satin and polish with 300 meter water resistance and an automatic winding 3-day power reserve with a lovely blue metallic sunburst dial, sandwich dial. As you can see, there is a stenciled metallic disc over a solid disc below of ecru colored simulated patina superluminova. There is a time zone feature for stepping the hour hand independently, and the watch features a full bracelet with the Crown Guard Fashion 4 form that's designed to evoke Panerai's design icon, the device protecting the crown locked with a lever. Throw it on the wrist and you can see this piece, which is scarcely seen abroad outside of the Japanese domestic market. It wears well for a 44. I would have guessed that this was a 42. It is a 44, and I have to say, on the wrist, it's easy to wear, it's handsome, it's unexpectedly thin with the second generation 9000 movement. This is the 9100, which is thinner than the previous 9000 3-day. So this watch wears nice and compact and all around all the time watch, and one of the most impressive and unusual Panerai watches. The knock on Panerai is always fun watches, useful, sporting, and durable, but they all look the same. With this one, you get everything that Panerai is, including the iconic Luminor case, but you get it with individuality and exclusivity. Let's talk about a watch that gives you absolute exclusivity, because I got to admit, you hardly see more than one in any given place at any given time, and that is the Lange Söhne 1815 Black. This is the second generation watch that came out in 2017, and it features a black dial, which is black galvanized on a sterling silver base. So this dial, which features a pulsometer scale, which is used for gauging the pulse of a patient or perhaps a race car driver, it features a dished sterling silver dial in black inside a 39.5mm white gold case that is 11mm thick, and thus a wonderful match for wrists who perhaps cannot wear the thickness of the datograph even if they like the size. A simple stripped down flyback chronograph with manual wind action. This one features caliber L9515, and you can see it is absolutely breathtaking. With a traditional lateral clutch column wheel architecture, you can see that the lateral clutch is fully jeweled with no bushings, beating away at 18,000 vibrations per hour, and you will note both free sprung and featuring a hacking seconds function with an overcoil hairspring. The half bridge for the balance is freehand engraved. The rest is like a forest of metal colors, textures, and tones. You'll see gold, violet, blue, the silver satin finished steel of the chronograph levers, all of that, and it is bottomless with a combination of Glashutte stripes, engine-turned perlage, satin finish, black polish, and mirrored anglage, with both black polished and fire-blued screws. Throw it on the wrist. By the way, note the full deployant clasp, uncommon on Lange watches, and you can see that this is a truly special watch. It has gravitas without being particularly large. You can see it's easily cuffable as it sits fairly low on the wrist at 11mm, and it is cleaner than the datograph with more symmetry than the datograph. So if you prefer a watch that has datograph level watchmaking and datograph 1, not datograph 2 size, but you want greater symmetry and a thinner case, this is the watch for you. This is the 1815 Chronograph black dial in white gold. Now we have a truly special watch right here, and I never really get over this watch. Every time it comes in, I have to gaze longingly at what might be the most interesting Lange watch in the Lange 1 line outside of the short-lived steel, Cellini editions, and 1A. But this watch in white gold with blue sterling silver galvanized dial is one of the most fetching timepieces you can buy from any brand, from any era, from any price point. 38.5mm with everything the Lange 1 is. It has that calculated asymmetry on the dial that actually features a complex underlying series of mathematical relationships. Type in golden section or golden ratio and Lange 1, you'll see what I mean. Now turn it all over and you can see the original Lange 1990 caliber designed with work starting in the year 1990, 3-day power reserve, twin barrels, everything that would become modern-day Saxon watch finish, starting with the style of a pocket watch, a 3/4 bridge, just as you would have seen on Lange pocket watches of the 19th and early 20th century, jewel set in screw-fixed chaton rather than pressed directly into the bridge, German silver or nickel copper zinc alloy used for all bridges and plates, mirrored anglage, engine turning, Glashutte stripes, and then of course you can see a black polished swan's neck regulator over a freehand engraved half bridge. No two exactly alike. That is not done mechanically or with a lathe. It's done with a burin and a hammer. beaten away at 21,600 vibrations per hour. Throw it on the wrist. It's a substantial watch in white gold with a silver dial. You feel the mass, and the mass equates to class. This is a timepiece that could easily be your only watch, and happily your only watch for life, whether you're starting your Lange collection or you're looking for an exit watch to cap an existing collection. It doesn't get any better than this. If you're going to own just one German-made watch, it probably should be a Lange 1, or at least a Lange 1, a Dado, or a Zeitwerk. Own the canon of Lange. Of course, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I own just one German watch, and it's a Sinn. Speaking of which, there is something to be said for utilitarian timepieces, and none inspires quite so well as the Seamaster 300. Not the Diver 300, but the Seamaster 300, launched back in 2014, 41 millimeters. This is a watch that features a vintage-inspired, late 1950s-inspired Omega dial. This harks right back to the original 2913, if we're going all the way back to the first Seamaster 300 dive watch. That was, after all, a professional diver. The Seamaster, up till 1957, had been a water-resistant watch line. In 57, it became a diver, and it looked just like this. You could see the vintage-style bezel. You could see a vintage-style dial, and you could see a vintage-style case, as there is minimal beveling on these squared-off lugs. The watch is still 300 meters water-resistant, and it still features a robust power reserve. You can see through the case back, it's based on the 8500 family, and I guess I'm not going to be able to show you underneath this NATO strap, but take my word for it, it's one of the most handsome and intriguing Omega calibers. 60-hour power reserve, twin mainspring barrels, anti-magnetic hairspring, a coaxial chronometer with a time zone feature that allows you to set the hour hand independently while the watch keeping time with its minutes and seconds. Now, of course, you can pull the crown out, now hack the movement and set precisely, but it's nice to have those two setting modes. A timepiece that never disappoints, and in this lovely black and orange strap, you can go a little bit tactical. Granted, tactical personnel probably wouldn't wear orange, but then again, your watch, your rules. Now, I can show you a watch that almost certainly would never find its way to a Spec War Commando's wrist. The year 2000, that is launch year, in-house Rolex caliber Daytona. This is the spectacular Daytona Beach 116519 in white gold, 40 millimeters, with a yellow mother of pearl dial and one of the few ever lizard straps equipped from the factory by Rolex. This was a series of 4 watches. The pink, the blue, and the yellow featured mother of pearl dials, the green with chrysoprase. Now, this timepiece has a wonderful, carefree spirit about it. It's not one to wear so much during the race at Daytona. This is more one for the beach, hence the nickname Daytona Beach for the series. 3-day power reserve, vertical clutch and column wheel, and still 100 meters water resistant. The watch features an integration of strap with case flank thanks to this half link that eliminates any daylight between case and strap. Features a white gold deployant clasp with a clamshell lock, and you can see on the wrist, this is a bit more cheerful, upbeat, and one might even say whimsical Rolex. Can Rolex Geneva crack a smile? You better believe it, and it comes by way of Daytona, Florida. On my wrist, 16 centimeters, you can see the fit is excellent, the thickness only 12.2 millimeters, an easy watch to wear, and I dare say probably the most masculine of the Daytona Beach series, because you can throw this watch on a gray or a black strap and it looks the part of a rather sober men's watch. Throw it on the original factory gate, or I should say lizard right there, and you have an electrifying beach watch. This is a watch that shifts gear pretty well. I can't necessarily say that of the pink dial model. Now, here's a watch that is underrated because it comes from an underrated family, the Day-Dates. 36 millimeters in yellow gold. This is a roughly 1979 serial number Rolex ferrite dial. So basically, it's a form of iron, and the watch is yellow gold with matching yellow gold hands, yellow gold Roman numerals radially arrayed, yellow gold gilt-style dial, and you'll even note yellow gold frames for the yellow gold colored metallic discs for the day and the date. Throw this one on the wrist, it's absolutely stunning. This is a reference 18038. And you can see that it's easy to wear. The original mid-1950s 36mm Rolex President size, as the watch is often nicknamed the President due to its famous and infamous clientele through the years. It features the President bracelet, and the watch is nicknamed President, but the bracelet properly is called the Rolex President bracelet. And this one's in excellent condition with minimal play. The blue-gray dial, the ferrite, is absolutely stunning. Nothing else like it, to be perfectly honest. And Rolex was really playing fast and loose with a sense of adventure with its 1970s and early 80s Day-Date dials. The era that spawned everything from the Stella dials to Tiger's Eye. Now let's talk about a watch that's a bit more conventional, but by no means common. I always like to entertain you with uncommon Rolex watches on the show because they interest me more, and I find they probably interest you more too, as everyone has done steel Rolex to death. Well, this one's white gold, and it's the latest version of the Pepsi Oyster bracelet. So this is the watch, new for 2019. It is the 126, not the 116, the 126. And then it is the 719. 126719 in white gold with a blue lacquer dial. It features the new 3-day caliber. You can see it features the lovely pastel tones of the Cerachrom ceramic bezel GMT blue and red, which are really a little bit more like a sort of light violet or Audi Sport Nogaro blue. And then pastel red that actually resembles the original 6542 GMT's bakelite bezel tones more than anything else. Now the timepiece is substantial in white gold, so you're not going to forget you're wearing a very special watch. It's heavy, and I find that's delightful in a watch like this, which costs a lot of money and should feel special. This one does. It looks special too. To further distinguish the white gold watch from the new steel Pepsi, you get the Oyster bracelet, not available on the steel Pepsi, and you get the blue dial, not available on the steel Pepsi. So this is a timepiece that keeps the time, swims down to 100 meters. It's a chronometer, it's a 3-day, it's the latest caliber with the Chrono-G escapement and the larger mainspring. And of course, it has the somewhat more butch and masculine 3-link sport-style Oyster bracelet. Looks great on a 16-centimeter circumference wrist or larger. Because it is a white gold Rolex GMT, it looks the part even if your wrist is huge. This watch has presence and stance. We're continuing our run through Rolex, and we're going to shift back to something a little bit more common, but discontinued as of 2019. I know you guys are fans of all things Batman, and while the Batman franchise on the screen has seen better days, I can't say the watch ever has. Hotter than it's ever been since its launch in 2013 and now discontinued, the Oyster bracelet black and blue is a landmark watch. There will always be another Rolex. They love to iterate themselves. What there can never be is another first, and this was the first ever blue GMT hand, black and blue bezel Rolex GMT-Master or Master II. So this is a landmark watch for Rolex and still red hot on the collector scene. Also 100 meters like the last, but in steel, and thus inherently a bit more durable than any white gold watch. Throw it on the wrist and you can see it has an impressive presence, but a different persona than the blue dial Pepsi. This one's a bit more discreet, a bit more muted. It's got just enough color to stand out and have a personality, a little bit of a nod and a wink to the fact that Rolex still has fun with these designs while remaining sober enough to be your business watch. And if you are a doctor or a dentist and you don't quite want to advertise how well you're extracting bodily tissue or teeth, well, this is the watch for you, flying just far enough under the radar that you won't be picked up. You're still going to have to drive a Buick, not a Cadillac, but you can have the watch of your dreams. Now, let's talk once more about crazy Rolex watches and uncommon Rolex watches. Let's talk about my favorite Daytona ever, and maybe my favorite Rolex not named Z Blue. This is the landmark 2013 Platinum Daytona. Another first, and I like to say first is a flag that flies forever. This was the first ever series production Cosmograph Daytona. There were other low single-digit run Platinum Daytonas, particularly in the Zenith generation, but this was the first one to be built for public consumption, the first one to be built on a full platinum bracelet, and the first one to combine platinum with that lovely chocolate Cerachrom bezel and chocolate registers. This thing is tasty enough that with your eyes you get a sense of York peppermint patties with the combination of the chocolate and the ice blue minty tones of that sunburst Rolex ice blue or glacier blue metallic dial. I don't know how to describe this watch other than it feels like a Royal Oak offshore in the hand and on the wrist, but then you look down and it's 40 millimeters of Cosmograph, 100 meters water resistant, 3-day power reserve. Vertical clutch and a column wheel, mechanically identical to all the other 6 digits, but this is a watch that is absolutely divine. And when you think about what this watch has tied up, all of the firsts and the 50th anniversary status, as this was the 50th anniversary Daytona, you could have this for less than half of what you'll pay for a Richard Mille RM11. And in my opinion, you're getting a more substantial, historically important watch, and you're also getting something that has a bit more versatility to it. So you give up nothing in status, stature, or historic importance, to say nothing of watchmaking, in which case I regard the Rolex as superior to an RM11, but you're paying half as much as you would for any RM11 when you get this watch in platinum, and it would be my choice by far. And if I were to create a Rolex collection, this would be my Daytona. Again, you can taste it with your eyes. I don't say that of many watches. Now let's jump to the high horology once more, and a watch that represents something like the heart and soul of FP Journe. I often talk about buying a canonical watch if you're going to buy just one or a few watches from a brand. Well, if you're going to buy an FP Journe, you want to get yourself a Resonance or a Tourbillon. That's really the heart and soul of the brand. That and perhaps the CS or the Chronomètre Bleu. Now this is a 40mm platinum with white gold dial, and you can see the dial features, well, everything you need. You've got the power reserve, you've got the deadbeat second sub-register, hours, minutes, and then the tourbillon. It is a 1-minute tourbillon, free sprung, and you can see it's on a filigree style black polished wire bridge, or I should say wire cage, under a half bridge that is specular finished, rounded, and black polished. The movement itself, manual wind, 42-hour power reserve with a constant force device on the back. So for most of the power reserve of this watch, the balance is able to maintain constant amplitude. For about 30 hours, the watch, thanks to the constant force spring, which acts as a buffer between the mainspring barrel and the escapement, the constant force spring, which impulses every 1 second, ensures that constant amplitude via constant force is maintained. The bridges and the plates are 18-karat rose gold, so precious metal inside and out. The case is platinum, the movement is rose gold, and the dial is made of white gold. Now let's talk about some of the quirks of this watch. Why, when fully wound, does the power reserve indicate 0? Well, that is the number of hours since I wound the watch. Basically 0. I wound it just before the show. Why is this done? Well, it's because FP Journe is referencing his heroes. In particular, those who created the marine chronometers of the 18th century, including one of his watch throbs, Fernand Berthoud. Fernand Berthoud created chronometers with a power reserve that would start at 0 because a marine chronometer or navigation clock needed to be wound at the same time every day in order to keep ideal time. So you would want to make sure you wound the watch at approximately 24 hours each day since its last winding. That is why the chronometers featured time since wound rather than power reserve remaining, and that's why Journe uses that tactic. Now, after 30 hours of elapsed power reserve, the watch deactivates its stop seconds or remontoire system and goes into scrolling seconds mode to save power and keep its operation. But you should wind the watch every day. Overcoil hairspring 6-position adjustment, as good as it gets, and a substantial watch, though 40mm, being white gold and rose gold on the inside and platinum on the outside. Like the Daytona, eyes closed, it feels like a much larger watch than it is. The first FP Journe Tourbillon was made in wristwatch form in 1994, and in pocket watch form it was finished in 1983. So the Tourbillon pocket watch that became the FP Journe Tourbillon Remontoire launched in 1999, exactly 20 years ago, with a 20-piece subscription series for his personal friends who had commissioned his past pocket watches and those who wanted to help launch the then incipient Montre Journe brand, or the first FP Journe branded wristwatches. From those first 20, an entire empire and series of award winners has followed, but this watch connects you to the very beginning of FP Journe's career as a watchmaker under his own name in the wristwatch space. Now, a timepiece that will not cost you an arm and a leg, probably less than an FP Journe pin buckle, to be perfectly honest. One of my favorites of 2018, and possibly the best overall of 2018. This is the Nomos Autobahn, 41mm stainless steel, designed by Berlin-based industrial designer and architect Werner Eislinger. It is a 100-meter water-resistant, automatic winding, fully loomed sports watch. Now, of course, fahren, we are driving on the Autobahn, and this is a motorsports, and perhaps I should say motorsports venue-inspired watch. You can see the dial is not calibrated between 4 and 8, exactly as it would be on an automotive tachometer or speedometer, where the needle rests either at min or at max. You could see that the radial array and the font used for the numerals is very much automotive imagery, taken straight from a dashboard instrument. You have where the odometer would be, the date, which by the way is bidirectionally adjustable with this new movement, the caliber DUW6101. I'm going to put it in quickset mode. I don't have quite the nails I normally do, but you can see that the date can be adjusted in either direction. This was a Nomos innovation launched on this watch, automatic 42-hour power reserve. The dial features a dished slope, much like banked tracks in Europe, such as the Autodromo Monza and Brooklands in England. Monza's in Italy, Brooklands is in England, and it even has a little bit of the bowl-shaped Brickyard, or the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which also became legendary during that period. And it's worth noting that in the pre-war period, brands such as Maserati and Bentley both raced at the Indy 500 as well as at Monza and Brooklands. Now you can see the same form, that bowl shape with the dished profile, is recapped in the small seconds, and when you turn it all over, you can see the DUW 6101. Deutsche Uhrenwerke, this is a manufacturer movement, and because it has the blued hairspring, you know that this is the swing system. When you see DUW and the blued hairspring, you know you're looking at Nomos' own hairspring, balance, and escapement. Everything created in-house, and again, 100 meters water resistant. This one can be worn in the water, even if it is a land sports and land activity inspired watch. I always like to say I'm always shopping for my next car and my next watch. I'm currently hot on real 6.75 liter Bentleys, and they're a great buy. I'm kind of looking at the Brooklands. So this watch is watering my appetite for watches and wheels both. The nice thing about this dial is that it is explosively loomed at night in a way only an automotive dashboard can be. I absolutely adore that watch. Now, if you've got a bit more budget and you want something equally hot from the 2018 model year, everyone was talking about the Chameleon dial from Jaeger-LeCoultre. This is a watch known as the Reverso Tribute Small Seconds. And in this studio lighting, which has large elements of yellow light spectrum, you could see that the dial turns an eggplant metallic purple. Well, I can tell you that the dial, as seen in person, is the color of the strap, blue, navy blue metallic, but the light indoors transforms this dial. Anything from slate gray to bright blue to eggplant purple and everything in between. Now the watch is 45.6 millimeters from lug to lug and about 27.5 wide, under 10 millimeters thick, and it's a traditional Reverso case, so you can customize it with enameling, lacquer, or engraving on the back. JLC will do this at the factory, and you can see there's a sunburst motif radiating out from an imaginary center point just off the side of the case, reminding you that the Reverso was originally a sports watch, as the idea originally was back in the era of glass crystals, polo mallets could not shatter the reverse side of the watch, so you could wear it during polo, and then after the game, pop it back around to its time-telling side. Now, this is a Casa Faliano designed strap. As you can see, it says Casa Faliano Collection. These are Faliano Argentine designed, but European crafted leather straps designed to play on the popularity of the Faliano custom straps released in only a few dozen copies a year to JLC. Faliano principally creating polo equipment. This is their design, but created to their design by European manufacturers. You can see the watch, manual wind, caliber 822, now free sprung inside the case, and an easy watch to wear. I can tell you that it features a quick release strap system that allows you to pull the tab and release the strap from both sides of the case, and then there is a quick release system built into the clasp itself, and you can see there is a push here logo where you actually push down and remove the clasp. So you can take off the clasp as well as both sides of the strap without any tools, and you can see from 2016 on, JLC started adapting a new profile to the case back of the Reverso. No longer a Broncard-like flat plank. It has a little bit of camber to wear better on smaller wrists and wear more comfortably on all wrists. Okay, what have we not yet highlighted? Let's talk about an Omega that flies under the radar. The 57, which came out in 2013 is probably the least loved Speedmaster, and undeservedly so. This is a technically sophisticated watch, 41.5 millimeters in a universally wearable size, white dial, blued hands and indices, titanium case and matching bracelet. You can see the watch has pretty much everything you would want. Inside, you have Omega exclusive caliber 9300, column wheel, vertical clutch, coaxial escapement, chronometer certified, and you could see the column wheel through the skeletonized bridges. Full balance bridge, free sprung for shock resistant, anti-magnetic silicone hairspring, twin barrel, 60-hour power reserve, all of that. And frankly, this is a watch that you need to love more. I need to love more. All of us need to promote more because it is the best kept secret in the Omega product labyrinth. Everything I just said, plus brightly loomed and 100 meters water resistant, it's swimmable in a way that most Speedmasters are not. You can see it's designed to evoke that original CK2915 Speedmaster of 1957, but this one's less literal than some of the tribute watches. You can see it has the minimally beveled lugs, it has the no-guard profile around its crown and pushers, and of course it has the Alpha-style hands that debuted in 1957, along with the twin register design of 1957, but the watch is a triple register chronograph. You can't quite see it, but on the counter over at 3 o'clock, there is a mono counter with both hours and minutes. So you get a triple register chronograph with a double register chronograph dial. All of the indices are applique, and there is a tachymeter scale in 1957 inspired brushed metal. A lovely watch that wears feather light thanks to the titanium, and because Omega uses grade 5 tie on this watch, it's also more scratch resistant than standard 316L steel. Okay, speaking of scratch-resistant grade 5 titanium, we need to talk about a watch that's really more sapphire than tie, but nominally, the 2016 to present Ressence Type 5 sports watch is a titanium watch. 46 millimeters, this is one of two oil-filled Ressence watches, which is to say, underneath the cambered sapphire is an oil with the same index of refraction as the sapphire itself. So from any angle, when you're submerged or atop the surf, you can see the time on this dial. There is no lateral or oblique distortion. Now, because this is also an oil-bathed dial, the dial is a sealed module. You've asked me, what does it cost to service a Ressence? Is it like a tourbillon, a minute repeater? Well, I spoke to Benoit Mintians, the founder of the company and the designer of the system at Dubai Watch Week. He confirmed they have done low single-digit services on the oil-filled Type 3 and Type 5s since they debuted now 6 years ago with the Type 3. In general, when you service this watch, because the dial is sealed and self-lubricating in oil, it is nothing more than an ETA 2824 service of the base movement. As cheap and straightforward as they come, that's how much it costs to service a Ressence. You wind and set the watch with the case back, and as you can see, there is a rotor, so it's also automatic winding. 46 millimeters in grade 5 tie, you can see just how little of the case is titanium. It has a rotating unidirectional dive-style bezel, and this is the first swimmable Ressence watch with 100-meter water resistance. Now, it has a constant seconds indicator, minutes, hours, an oil reservoir temperature gauge, so you know the danger zone, high or low. And the watch, although 46 because it's almost lugless, wears easily even on a small wrist. It is a regulator dial with separate seconds, hours, and minutes. And I'm going to show you how you lock it, because you have a mobile bezel with a dive watch. It's unidirectional, but because the watch can be set in either direction using the case back, you need to make sure you don't accidentally extend your dive. So then you lock the case, so you can't wind using the case back. Now, when you unlock the case, you move it into setup mode. And now I can set the watch, I can wind the watch. And if you're wondering what time it is right now, well, let me show you how you read this dial. Right now, you could see that it is 1, because the minute's at 60 and the hour is at 1. So it is exactly 1. And that's how you read this regulator style dial dive watch. Not too many of those out there. It's pretty much Oris, Ressence, and I can't name too many others. So this is a unique product, even within a unique product class, oil-filled and distinctive. This is a timepiece that also features an explosive lume shot at night, one of the brightest and most readable watches you will ever encounter in any light on any wrist. IWC, we talked about icons, Rolex with the GMT and the Daytona, Omega with the Speedmaster, JLC with the Reverso, and Lange with its Lange 1. How about an icon from IWC of Schaffhausen? I've had it up to here with the pilots, and now I've brought the Portugueser. 44 millimeters in rose gold. This is the 5454-06, a model launched in 2011, manual wind, time only, three-hand, harking back to the original IWC Portugueser 325 reference from 1939. Back then, the idea was to create the world's most accurate wristwatch by putting a pocket watch caliber more accurate in a wristwatch format. The result was a giant and the first ever oversized watch. All of the design features of that dial and case continue on this watch, which has an explosive ardoise or slate metallic dial, leaf hands, Arabic numerals vertically arrayed, small seconds, and a railroad track outboard to read the minutes. Turn it all over, you have IWC pocket watch caliber 98300, manual wind, 5-position adjustment, overcoil hairspring with the world's largest hacking lever. You can actually see the hacking lever move. Beaten away at 18K with the overcoil hairspring adjusted by hands. Pocket watch features a swan's neck style click and click spring, and you can see the swan's neck extended as I wind the watch. That's from IWC pocket watches. You can also see that there's a 3/4 style bridge, a traditional center wheel train architecture whereby the second wheel off the barrel is at center, jewel set in chaton, an oversized Jones arrow regulating index, engine turning on the base plate, and one enormous balance that's almost the radius or 1/2 the diameter of the movement. 46-hour manual wind, power reserve, big slow beat. Throw it on the wrist, it's only 10 millimeters thick. So though it's as broad as a saucer, it's equally flat and elegant. An awesome dress watch if you just don't like wearing a quarter on your wrist, and most dress watches are too petite for your taste. Can the Calatrava and go straight for the Portugueser. Okay. What should we discuss next? What might I have forgotten? Well, how about the Apollo 15 35th anniversary? Now, we saw the Speedmaster 57, but if you want the real Speedmaster in the eyes of the purists, you want a moonwatch. 42 millimeters with the moonwatch caliber 1861 based on the ancient Lamagna 1873 that still flies with NASA. This is the 1,971-piece Apollo 15 limited edition from 2006, a combination of rose gold inside and out with stainless steel case and bracelet. The reverse side features the mission insignia from Apollo 15, which was one of the extended stay Apollo missions featuring 3 men. You could see their last names on the I would say tri-chevron logo featuring the image of the moon in the background. This was one of the extended stays that brought all the toys. This was one of the moon buggy or lunar module, lunar buggy missions. They traveled about 17 miles with the vehicle. I'll call it a go-kart. We can call it the lunar buggy or perhaps the lunar mobile, the moon mobile, whatever you like to call it. That was the best part of this mission. This timepiece is a lovely and unconventional Speedmaster limited edition that is uncommonly seen. So you can throw this one on if you want to shoot a lunar rover watches and wheels for my Monday show. I would be beholden to anyone who can secure one of those shots. I hear there's still a lunar rover or two kicking around NASA's aerospace museums and the Smithsonian. 42 millimeters in rose gold and steel. This is a very special moon watch. And again, not one of the most common limited editions and one of the most memorable. If you want a speedy limited edition that's not going to wear thin or be quickly replaced, this is one of the best. Here we are 13 years later, and it's still a standout. Okay, have I forgotten anything? No? Well, anecdote, quick story. I went to see the Blue Oyster Cult at the King of Prussia Casino Resort this weekend, and they were on fire. You know, when you see the BOC, you're at least going to get the 2.5 top 40 songs. Don't Fear the Reaper, naturally. You're going to get Burnin' For You, and again, for your friend who's not into the band that you dragged to the concert, you're going to get Godzilla. And for 2019, 65 years of Gojira, the original 1954 Toho film that was anything but a comedy or a farce, a very serious reflection on the legacy of war, the nuclear age, and helplessness in the era of superpowers. Gojira was a sort of psychic thermometer of the Japanese psyche at the time it was made. And this watch celebrates the very real artistic legacy legacy of Japan's most famous international ambassador. In titanium, 650 pieces were made, and though you can't quite see it, this is a hot-rodded spring drive. The ultra-precise 9R15 with the gold lion medallion, meaning this one is accurate to plus or minus 10 seconds per month. 44.5 millimeters in Zaratsu finished and exquisitely faceted grade 5 titanium. This watch features a super intense dial with a sunray motif designed to evoke Godzilla's atomic breath, and a sapphire capped metallic bezel that is absolutely sublime, like what you'll find on a Blancpain 50 Fathoms. The 3-day spring drive caliber is extraordinary and accurate, mixing mechanical soul with quartz precision, and the timepiece is easy to wear despite being a 44.5. You can see this 200-meter water-resistant full-service sports watch is easy to wear on my smaller wrist. I'll also mention being fully loomed automatic and swimmable. This is an all-the-time watch, so if you want one Grand Seiko to represent everything that is distinctive and nationally proud about the traditions of Japan. This is a brand that is not trying to be European. It's not trying to be American. It's proudly Japanese, and perhaps the most iconically Japanese watch of the year, not from an independent, is this SBGA 405 Godzilla. Now, I'll also mention, in addition to the hot-rodded spring drive, the custom dial case and bezel, you get one of the very few shark skin leather straps I've ever seen on a factory product, and the combination of the black with the red undertone is designed to evoke Godzilla's skin once we got into the color era of Gojira. This is a timepiece that is lovely and evocative, but if you want something that is not quite perhaps the cultural caricature that a Godzilla Grand Seiko watch can be, well, I've got a dial that's even more exquisite, and this is a watch that is redoubtable by any cultural, geographic, artistic, or aesthetic standard. This might be the Grand Seiko of 2019. It's the watch we know as the Skyflake. The SBGA 407 40.2 millimeters in stainless steel with the snowflake dial we remember from the SBGA 11 and later 211, albeit rendered in an exquisite blue snowdrift texture. This watch is not merely a blue dial snowflake, as it's steel rather than titanium, and it features the vintage-inspired case reminiscent of the original 1960 Grand Seiko 3180 rather than the 44 GS case that you get with the standard snowflake. You also get the vintage-inspired Grand Seiko logo on the full deployant clasp. Again, this one is on a strap with a clasp rather than a bracelet with the clasp, and you get that vintage logo that accompanies the vintage-inspired case. Still Zaratsu tin plate polished. I'm sorry, this one has my fingerprints on it. It is immaculately black polished externally by manual methodology against a spinning tin wheel. Inside, you've got a mechanical quartz hybrid in the spring drive. This is the 9R65, so it's not the hybrid hot rod that the Godzilla is, but it's still accurate to plus or minus 15 seconds per month. It doesn't get much better than that. Remember, a chronometer in Switzerland, a mechanical chronometer can be inaccurate to -4 plus 6 seconds a day. 3-day power reserve, hand-finished dial furniture, the logo, the indices, as well as the hands, which are gorgeous, faceted and black polished, and there's a fire-annealed blue Lancet-style counterweighted seconds hand. Although it's not expressly a sports watch, it is 100 meters water resistant. And when you throw it on the wrist, there is nothing else like the Skyflake. The sky is falling here on Watchbox Reviews. And let me remind you, I now have an email address, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Email me and my team directly. We are the tech guys, the watch guys, the people who can answer your most exacting and idiosyncratic sales questions, especially on a technical level. We also do pricing and availability plus accessories and condition for all the watches you see here. So reach out to me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com, if you see something that you would like to take home. I always say that this is show and tell for adults. Thanks for joining me. Time out, Tim out. All prices in the description, and thanks for logging on.